Hey, this is Ryan with Goodwin Racing, and we're going to talk about Hubcentric Rings. For such a simple part, there's actually a lot of confusion around these, and most of that confusion just comes down to people asking, do I need Hubcentric Rings or not? And we're answering that question all the time. The answer is actually not an absolute yes or no for everybody. It's usually, well, they're not mandatory, but we do recommend that most people use them. There's a couple of reasons why we may recommend against them for certain people, and this and that, but we'll kind of explain all of that in this video. But the very first thing that we should cover is just explaining what they are, what they do. And I'm really visual, so I think it's, as soon as you show somebody something, it makes a lot more sense than just trying to explain it in words. So starting with the basics, this is your front hub on a car. We're dealing with Miatas all the time. This is a 1990 Mazda Miata, but all the generations and the Fiat 124 and everything are all going to work the same way. You've got the hub here, and this has got a little protrusion, and at least for this generation of Miata, it's a 54.1 millimeter diameter around here. Now on a wheel, this is one of our 1510 decograms that this car runs, but this is the case for any wheel. The wheel is going to have an inner diameter here, which slides over that outer diameter. And that helps to center the wheel before you ever tighten lug nuts on or anything. You just put it on and it's centering itself. Now, the factory wheels for the cars are made hub-centric. And so what that means is that inner diameter here matches the outer diameter of that. The difference comes down to aftermarket wheels, and aftermarket wheels are usually not made hub-centric to a particular car. What they're going to do is going to make this inside diameter larger than all of the car's hubs that they want the wheel to fit. So for 4x100 wheels like this, you've got Mini Coopers, BMWs, Miatas, Hondas, a bunch of different cars that all can run a 4x100, but they've all got different hub sizes. And so the manufacturer of the wheel doesn't want to basically, force themselves out of being able to sell a wheel to any one of those owners of those cars. And so they're going to make this inside diameter large enough that it fits over everybody's hub. Which makes sense. There's nothing wrong with a wheel that's not hub-centric to a car when we're talking about aftermarket wheels. That's good business practice to make sure that they can sell them to everybody who might want them. So some people want a hub-centric wheel for a Miata. Well, that almost doesn't exist anymore. And it just doesn't make sense for the companies that are making the wheels to do that. So don't worry about trying to find that. That's what hub-centric rings do. So these are basically an adapter. The inside diameter matches whatever you need for your car. So in the case of this early Miata, it's 54 millimeters, and it pops in right there. And so you can see the inside diameter is such that it matches the Miata. Outside diameter matches, well, you get the correct one with the outside diameter for whatever aftermarket wheel you're wanting to run. And so this installs here, and it kind of pops in. And now your wheel chokes down to 54 millimeters, matches the car that you're trying to put it on. And of course, if it's an NC, it's going to be a different size. If it's a Mini Cooper or something, it's going to be a different size. But you're getting the correct adapter size for the car, well, for the wheel that you have, trying to fit it up to the car that you have. That's the important part. Now, when you're looking at Hubcentric Rings and wheels on GoodwinRacing.com, you're going to see that we list the inner diameter size here, or even sometimes we'll just say what Hubcentric ring it takes, but we'll always list that on the product page for the wheel that you're interested in, that you're looking at. And so that will always say, hey, this is a 73 millimeter, this takes a 73 millimeter Hubcentric ring, or a 60 something, it'll always tell you on our site. And then you'll see the Hubcentric rings on our site are listed as one number / a second number. And so you'll see like a 73/54, a 73 millimeter adapter to a 54 millimeter car. And so you can always find them pretty easily on our site looking for it that way. look for the wheel that you're interested in, and then look for the size that you need for that wheel for the car that you're running. And we've got that info specific to each car right in our wheel section. So all that information is on the website. Now you'll notice that some of the Hubcentric rings out there are made out of plastic, and some of them, it's rarer, some of them are made out of aluminum. Don't get hung up on what material they're made out of. Plastic is really common, they're actually really strong. Sometimes for the particular size you're looking for, like Enkeis for example, those only come in aluminum. Got one of those right here. This is an aluminum one specifically made by Enkei for their wheels. And actually it's got a snap ring that serves as a retainer to keep it kind of clipped into the wheel. And so when you get them, sometimes these two are not assembled together. You just slide the snap ring onto the back side of the Hubcentric ring, which is the only size it would, or only side that it would fit on. And then that goes into the wheel. But don't shop around thinking that you've got to find the size that you need in aluminum. The aluminum is more expensive. Sometimes that's the only material that you can get the size that you need in, but there's nothing wrong with the plastic, and they cost less. As far as how to install these, I've got one correctly installed here. Do not put the Hubcentric ring on the car first and then try to put the wheel on. You always want to do it a Hubcentric ring inserted into the wheel, and then you'll put the wheel on the car. And now that gets us to, do you actually need Hubcentric rings? And why aren't we just saying, yeah, everybody needs them? So the whole reason that Hubcentric rings exist and why you want the wheel to self-center on the hub is just to eliminate the chances of the wheel ending up off center. Now, the wheel should self-center on the lug nuts. Lug nuts are, at least for all the wheels that we're dealing with for Miatas and similar, the lug nut is conical. And so in the wheel, you have a conical seat. And so as you tighten this down, it centers itself inside that conical seat in the wheel. And so it will actually shift the wheel around until it's dead center on the lug nuts. It absolutely works if you install the lug nuts correctly. And by correctly, what I mean is that you're putting all four on lightly, and then you're slowly torquing them down, tightening them down by hand, ideally, evenly and in a cross pattern. So you start with one, you'd move to the one directly across from it, and then you'd move to one next to it, and then do the other one. If you're dealing with this is a 4 by 100. If you're dealing with an NC that's got 5, then you do it in what they call a star pattern. If you tighten them down evenly and gently, then it will indeed center the wheel on the lug nut. The Hubcentric ring isn't necessary for things to end up centered on the car. But the problem comes with when you take the car, especially, well, if you don't know how to install them, then that could be a problem. But the real problem comes with when you take the car to a shop, and particularly dealerships. A lot of shops they get factory parts, but they're not familiar with aftermarket parts. And dealerships in particular can be pretty bad about that. And I know some dealerships are better than others. There's some dealerships out there that are awesome and they can install all kinds of aftermarket parts and they're great. But they're more the exception than the rule. So when you take it to a shop and they are familiar with factory parts, they're expecting that wheel is Hubcentric. They don't even understand that wheels can't be, or sometimes aren't, Hubcentric. So they're gonna slap that wheel on, and then they're just gonna put a lug nut on there, zap that thing all the way down with a gun, and then move on to the next one. And when you do that, it doesn't really give the wheel time to shift and center, and so you end up with a wheel that's off center, and then it feels like you've got a really imbalanced tire. And Miatas are particularly sensitive to that. They're a driver's car. They're designed to give you a lot of feedback through the steering wheel. You're gonna notice it a lot more than you would on any other car, even though you'd probably notice it on just about anything. So for that reason, Hubcentric rings kind of come into play because they eliminate the chance of that happening. Because as soon as you take the wheel and put it on the car, it's centered before you've even put a lug nut on there. And that's just nice, cheap insurance to have. You know it's not going to be an issue. So getting into why not everybody is running Hubcentric rings, the racers usually will elect not to run Hubcentric rings. And the reason for that is that, one, they're usually not taking their car to a shop. So they are the guys who are working on their car. They're the ones putting the wheels on and off, and they're aware of how to tighten lug nuts, so they just aren't worried about it. And two, and this gets into something that everybody should be aware of and just kind of keep track of, or keep an eye on when they're taking their wheels on and off. A Hubcentric ring, it's just held in by, except for like the Enkeis that have the snap ring, most Hubcentric rings are just held in by friction. And so when you take a wheel off, sometimes there's a little more friction on the hub connection to the ring than the wheel had. And so this ends up stuck on here. Not stuck, but it stays there. You take the wheel off, and sometimes people don't notice that. And so if you then try to put the wheel back on, sometimes you can damage this because it doesn't seat perfectly as you're going on, because they're not designed to be on the hub and then have the wheel go on. It's supposed to be in the wheel and then the wheel goes on. Also, racers are taking their wheels off and on, 10, 20 times more often than your average street car. And so they just don't want to have to worry about that. They don't want to have to look every time and make sure that the Hubcentric ring came off with the wheel. And sometimes you're swapping wheels, you're rotating tires. And so you'll have it get stuck on here on one corner, and then the wheel that you grab from the other corner that you're moving up to this spot has a Hubcentric wheel in it, and then you're sandwiching two of them together. It's not something that should really be a problem as long as you're paying attention, but it's just something to be aware of. Just about all of us at one point or another have not noticed that Hubcentric ring was still on the car and didn't come out with the wheel. So that's why racers just don't bother with them, because they don't need them, because they're doing the install correctly every time, because it's their own hands doing it and they know how to do it. And they just don't want that extra thing to have to worry about, especially if they're trying to swap wheels fast, in a race or something like that. So bottom line is that for most folks, we do recommend that they run Hubcentric rings on aftermarket wheels. It's just cheap insurance. A set of 4 of these rings are like 20 bucks. If the fancy aluminum ones, if that is what you need for the particular wheel you're running, maybe it's $35 or something like that. It's cheap insurance to make sure that whoever is working on the car isn't going to end up getting the wheel off center, and then you've got this vibration that you're trying to figure out the source of. If you get new tires mounted on wheels, and the tire shop puts the wheels back on and sends you out the door, and suddenly you've got a vibration, if you have Hubcentric rings in, then you can cross that off the list. You're not worried that they just put the wheels on off center. You can just jump straight to, hey, you must not have balanced the wheel and tire combo correctly. So it's a good thing to have. If you're not taking wheels off multiple times a week, all the time, and racing the car, and there's a potential that somebody else might be doing that work for you, get a set of Hubcentric rings. You can get them with your wheel order when you order the wheels. And so it's easy, we just throw them in the box. So for more questions, go to goodwinracing.com. We've got a contact page on our website where you can reach out to us if you've got any questions, things I didn't cover. You can also comment in the video below, and we'll answer questions there if there's something that you're wondering. And besides that, have fun.